Well, it is good to be back in Arizona, and good to have Ed back as well. He went to Reno, and last time I was here, and then after gambling on that, he came back. So I'm glad that he's back here. I really like your theme here, Light the World with Jesus Love. And as I look through the program, very excited, and also to see the Pathway to Health type event here and what you're doing with Arizona Sunshine. And I was thinking, what could I talk about today? What really impressed me is that how important camp meeting is and how important what you're doing is. I grew up in the church. I'm a minister's kid, actually a fourth generation Adventist pastor. And I started to think back, what happened at camp meeting? What happened at camp meeting in my life? And I guess the text that came to mind is a very familiar one that you don't even need to really look up. You are the light of the world. This is what Christ says. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So you come here, many of you, not as consumers, but as providers. And as I think back of the people that provided the experiences at Camp Meeting in my life, what a blessing it was. I remember I was not the best kid at Camp Meeting. I probably was very well known, but I was like the worst kid at Camp Meeting. And camp meeting for us in Michigan was like 3 weeks of camp pitch. And I was there the whole time. And then, hey, good to see you. And then you had the actual event. And by that time, I was just bored and I wanted to create drama. So remember once I was in this junior pavilion. They called it the junior pavilion. And there was this guy, Tony, who was presenting. And I was talking, I was doing everything I shouldn't do. And this guy used to be a wrestler. I know some of you know him, Tony Castlebuna was his name. And he was quite a speaker, right? And he was like a wrestler. And then he goes, if some of you that are talking, if you don't stop talking, I'm going to come out there and use my wrestling skills, And I just kept talking. And he jumped off the stage, and he came running down after me. I was terrified because he had told all these stories about how, he basically killed, almost killed people and brought them back to life. And I thought, that's me. So I ran as fast as I could. I dove underneath the fence, and I got out of there. And he tried to come after me, but he was a little, hadn't been. He was Panasonic. He was slightly ahead of himself, and he couldn't get out. He didn't get out. He didn't make it. And I laughed and I went, but he came looking for me. So I went to my cabin. Now, I'm not saying you guys should do this. Don't go look for people, but I went to my cabin, and this is kind of funny. The name of the number of the cabin was 1844. So I'm like in the cabin, right? And the investigative judgment began. So he comes and he's looking for me, and he goes, where is he? So he says, he's in 1844, I didn't know the significance of that then. But anyway, he comes to my dad, and he goes, my dad's a pastor, and he goes, where's your son? He goes, he's inside. He came right in the cabin. Well, I escaped through the back of the cabin to 1836. And I went through 1836, and he didn't find me. But, all through camp meeting, I was just like sneaking around, And I certainly didn't go back to juniors. Well, then comes the final day of camp meeting, I think that year we had HMS Richards speaking, and I didn't care about HMS Richards. I didn't care about anything, but I was out there playing, and I was throwing things at people, And these Michigan camp meetings, they had about 20,000 people there back then. And all of a sudden, there was this announcement that I didn't hear, but it got back to me through my grapevine, that there was a presentation being made in the main pavilion, and they were asking for me. And I said, uh-oh, no. What is this presentation? And they said, well, they're making a presentation about someone they think will do great things in life. I said, no, that's not, no, you got the wrong name. And they said, no, they're asking. So I go in there, and then I see Tony up there. He's making the presentation. He's trying to kill me up front. So I go up, and I get inside the pavilion now. I'm in there. And you know, my dad was a pastor, not that popular. He moved about every 3 years. And so everybody knew us in the conference. And he was more like an evangelist. Anyway, so, and by the way, he's one of my greatest heroes because he had a head injury when he was 7, got hit by a train. And so, you know, when pressure would build, he didn't handle that so well. Anyway, so we walk in there, and I still remember, you know, this is camp meeting. And all these people are like, he's saying, most likely to succeed or do something. And they're all going, no. All the people at these churches, because they know me, they go, no. They're like shaking their heads and whispering. And I go up front, and even my mom, I go past her, and she's going, it's a mistake. My sister's like, no. And I remember walking up on the front, and there's all these plastic plants and, you know, everything that didn't need to be watered. And I go up there, and I'm walking up there, and he has this certificate to give me, you know. And he says a few words, and I'm like, going over to get the certificate. And I get the certificate. And he says that these things are just untrue. Like, I see character qualities in you of leadership. I guess in a sense, I mean, I disrupted everything. And there's this and that. And I got home, I got back to my cabin. And this is the point I want you to make. I want to make with you today that, you know, there are people like me on this campground when I was back then. There's people that are hurting. There's young people that are in transition. Probably the most, you know, action-oriented people are going to be the people in juniors and early teen. And this is a very important time in their life. So he said that to me. I went back home, and I was like, what just happened, you know? I mean, this is just wrong. This guy lied up front. He was trying to kill me. You know, this is the investigative judgment time. He came after me in 1844. I wasn't thinking like it that way, but, you know, he's trying to get rid of me. And I don't know, sometime in the middle of the night, I said, you know what? If he believes that about me, maybe I should. Maybe I should do that. So I got up early. I cleaned up the cabin. My mother thought I had some kind of stroke or something. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I would like extort people in the parking lot after carrying their health food to their cars. It's like, you know, I carried this like 6 miles for you. What about, you know, $20? Back then that was like, you know, minister's salary for a year. So, you know, but then I didn't do that anymore. That day I was carrying everything free. And, you know, the people in the food tent, they had to have a whole tent in Michigan, a food tent. Remember the food tent? They were like, they knew a change had come over me, you know. In fact, the manager said to me, here, have a can of cutlets. And that's very significant, guys. Anyway, so the point is, how many of you get the point? What Tony did was something very important at camp meeting in my life. He called those things which are not as though they were. And it really, really changed my life. So, you know, how much time do I have? I could have a couple more minutes? Sure. I could tell you a couple more stories, but the point is, I don't care what division you're in. I remember once I was pastoring in Kansas, Nebraska, actually for 13 years. Someone here from Kansas, Nebraska? Nice.
I was in the primary division.
You were? Oh, no. No. Okay. All right. I've got some money here for you.
Sure you want to give me cutlets?
Yes. But I don't know what happened, but the conference president told me, he said, I would like you to serve this year in the cradle roll, the kindergarten division. And I said, oh man, this is a demotion, you know. And But it was better than the other option, which was being the janitor. Which that's good too. I mean, I was the janitor in one camp meeting, and I found that everybody is going to go where you are. So the way I looked at it was, I'm going to see everybody soon. And I just made a ministry out of it. And look, anything you have, there's an angle, okay? Well, anyway, so I got put in this primary decision. I said, what am I going to do here? I mean, I didn't have any kids at the time. And so I got my wife in there, and we were together. You know, we started singing to these kids. We started teaching them songs, and pretty soon their parents started coming. And I realized that the cradle roll in the primary it's for the kids, yeah, but they don't have a frontal lobe really, so they're not going to remember too much unless you do something very traumatic. But their parents are there, and their parents are coming back, and their parents, maybe they're not even in the church, but they want their kids to be there, or maybe the grandparents are bringing their kids. This is a significant place. It's a very significant place, and it might be the only time they're going to come back. Now, don't make mistakes like I did once I got so into it. One of the kids wandered off, and he went out without, and his mom came and said, "Where's Caleb?" And I said, "Oh, he's in here somewhere." She goes, "He's not here." And I said, "Well, I don't know where he is." Oh, man, that was red alert. I got to talk to the president. But we found Caleb. He's a very successful young man now. But what I'm trying to say is, after the counseling, all of these divisions, everything you're doing here, it might seem insignificant, but it's highly significant. And camp meeting I just love camp meeting. I mean, how could you be an Adventist without loving camp meeting? I mean, it's like the 29th fundamental belief. We get together and we come together and things happen that could never happen in any other way. We have problems. I mean, we get to have them all in 1 week here. But it's this idea of coming together. And it's got to be busy. People are like, why is it so busy? It's got to be busy. If it's not busy, it's still going to be busy. And so it's got to be busy with the right things, right? Now, one of the things I liked about the Pathway events and the stuff we've worked on together is you get a bunch of Adventists together that used to fight about all kinds of things, but then they're serving, and they forget about fighting about anything. Isn't that exciting? So camp meeting, I don't know. And what about the adults, young adults, and the adults? I mean, this is so important. I just came back. And by the way, it's all built. This whole camp meeting thing's built on the local church. The local church is coming here, right? And they're coming to camp meeting. How many of you just love the local church? I mean, the local church is just so powerful. I mean, just before I came here, I emailed Jackie and said, I'm changing plans. I have to go to a funeral in Atlanta. So I had some baptisms on Sabbath afternoon. I'm not going to miss the baptisms. People studied with for years had baptisms on Sabbath afternoon at Weimar. We started a new church with the Northern California Conference on the campus. So I had these baptisms. And then one of my members passed away from Kansas when I was a pastor in Kansas, and they wanted me to do the funeral in Atlanta. So I found a red-eye flight. I flew red-eye, got there at 9 in the morning, had the funeral at 11:30, and then hung out with the family all day, which was such a blessing. And then came on another flight last night, and this guy, Pastor Tull, this guy's a great guy. You guys should just drive around with him. He's got so many stories. So anyway, the point is, we come together in our local churches, and we minister in times of joy and of sorrow, and God changes lives. I talked to the young people there at that funeral, and it was such a joy to have them get up and commit their lives again to Christ yesterday. Amen. In front of everybody, right there with their father is resting now, waiting the resurrection, and to hear them and what they said about what was happening in the local church. Look, I love Campmeeting. I love this church, and I know you do too. How many of you love the church? Now let me just say something to you. I've been a pastor, and I know sometimes you come here hurt and beat up and everything else. But I'm just praying this week that God will do something in your life as you're serving that you need. How many think that's a good thing to pray? Amen. And I want to read this little quote to you as we close here. From Patriarchs and Prophets. Listen to this. A consecrated Christian life is ever shedding light and comfort and peace. It is characterized by purity, tact, simplicity, and usefulness. How many think we need purity here this week? How many think we need tact this week? I've learned that people, you don't know where they're coming from, and your conversation could make the difference for good or for evil. It's characterized by purity, tact, simplicity, and usefulness. This sounds a lot like Campmeeting. It is controlled by that unselfish love that sanctifies the influence. And this is the part I like. It is full of Christ and leaves a track of light wherever its possessor may go. It leaves a what? A track of light. Other statements, she says, these are like shooting stars that don't leave anything behind them. They're just a flash. But how many of you want to leave a track of light? It's not your light, it's his light. You know, your theme here is a great thing. Light the world with Jesus' love. And things can happen here that will leave a track of light. I told you how it left a track of light in my life. My life was completely changed by Campmeeting, and I've only told you one story, so many other stories. This is the place where the attractive Christ works in our lives to attract and to leave a track of life. And as that happens, I think it's going to change you. It's going to change you. One last story as I'm walking off. This kid calls me. He went to my church. He went to Campmeeting with me. He was a bright kid. Memorized Daniel and Revelation when he was in 8th grade. He could say the whole book. Then he went off the rail. He ended up in China. He went to the language school in China, the diplomat school. He learned Chinese at the highest level. He had a television show across China. He's on a first-name basis with people like Barack Obama, because when they come over, they introduce. Anyway, so he does all this stuff, and he realizes it's empty. He realizes that what he was involved in was just the bright side of darkness. And he calls me up. He says to me, I remember a sermon that you preached when I was 15. I was like, slap me upside the head. Someone remembered something I said. And he goes, and I was so mad at you. I said, well, what did I say? You said that my frontal lobe would not fully be developed till I was 30. And I took that as a great insult. But I'm now 33. And I think I've been thinking about all the stuff I've done, and I want to come back to the Lord. Amen. Guys, God somehow put a track of light in his mind. Amen. How many want to be gripped by the attractive Christ, attract others through his love, and leave a track of light? God bless you in your very important ministries, whether it be the janitor or platform committee.